The message came through while I was assisting customers at my fashion boutique. I'm done with this marriage. Heading to Florida with my new girlfriend. She's 22. Oh, and I've withdrawn everything from our shared account. Good luck dealing with that. My hands remained steady as I read the words. My tone stayed pleasant as I helped Mrs. Anderson select a wrap. The only indication that my spouse of 12 years had just destroyed our marriage through a text was a subtle tension in my jaw. Once Mrs. Anderson departed with her purchase in our distinctive silver packaging, I composed my reply. Understood. Take care. My name is Elena, and at 38, I just received perhaps the most heartless goodbye imaginable. But while David was likely celebrating his dramatic departure, picturing me devastated by his betrayal, I was methodically closing my boutique for the evening. The warning signs had been accumulating for months. The extended evenings at the office that never corresponded with his actual earnings. The sudden password protections on all his devices. His newfound dedication to fitness, updated wardrobe, and attempts to reclaim his 20s. 3 months prior, I discovered a receipt for an upscale dinner for two on a night he'd supposedly been working overtime. That very evening, I'd established a separate banking account at a different institution. A week afterward, when he suggested consolidating our accounts for convenience, I'd agreed enthusiastically while quietly transferring my personal savings to the new account. The shared account he'd just emptied. It held precisely enough to avoid raising his suspicions, roughly 2 months of standard deposits. The remainder sat securely elsewhere, alongside comprehensive documentation of every questionable transaction he'd made over the past year. My phone vibrated again. Don't waste time pleading. Jessica and I depart tomorrow. I'll arrange to collect my belongings later. Jessica, the new administrative assistant at his workplace. I'd encountered her at the office holiday celebration, observed her exaggerated laughter at David's attempts at humor, noticed how she'd touch his shoulder when she believed nobody was watching. She was young enough to be his daughter, naive enough to consider herself unique. I didn't acknowledge his message. Instead, I contacted my attorney, the one I'd consulted 2 months earlier when I'd found the hotel expenses on our credit statement. The time has come, I stated plainly. The documentation is prepared, she responded. I'll submit everything first thing in the morning. Should I have him served in Florida? No urgency. Let him believe he's victorious first. Another message from David arrived. I realize this must be difficult for you. You're not getting any younger after all. At least you have your little business to occupy your time. My little business. The successful boutique I'd created from nothing. The enterprise generating more revenue than his middle management role. The venture whose earnings I'd carefully maintained separate from our shared finances. I smiled, imagining the certified documents that would await him in Florida. Let him savor his moment of triumph. That evening, I spent time in our residence. My residence, actually, since I'd inherited it from my grandmother and maintained it solely in my name despite David's repeated requests to add him to the property deed. Another fortunate instinct that had proven valuable. While organizing materials my attorney would require, I found our wedding photographs. David appeared so different then, before his midlife crisis transformed him into a parody of his former self. These days, he wore clothing too fitted for his changing physique, tried excessively hard to connect with younger colleagues, used contemporary slang that sounded absurd coming from a man of 45. My phone continued buzzing with messages from him, each more patronizing than the previous. I've been arranging this for months. Jessica understands me in ways you never did. You'll manage. Perhaps you'll meet someone closer to your own age. Already informed my family. They agree we simply drifted apart. It's nobody's fault, really. I captured screenshots of each message, adding them to my evidence collection. Let him dig himself deeper. My attorney would appreciate his casual confession of premeditation. his gleeful announcement about emptying our account. The final text captured my attention. By the way, I used the joint card to book our flights and hotel. Consider it my farewell present. Perfect. I contacted the credit card company. Mrs. Thompson speaking. I need to report unauthorized charges and cancel a card immediately. Certainly, ma'am. Can you identify the charges? 2 first-class tickets to Florida booked today. Hotel charges at the Ocean Vista Resort. And I'll need to remove my husband as an authorized user. Do you have documentation of the fraud? Text messages from my husband admitting he used our joint card to book travel with his girlfriend after emptying our bank account. I'll gladly forward them. The representative's professional demeanor couldn't quite conceal her satisfaction as she canceled the charges. David and Jessica would arrive at the airport tomorrow to discover their tickets invalidated, their hotel reservation canceled. My phone buzzed again. Don't worry about the house. I'll allow you to stay there until you find something smaller. I actually laughed aloud at that one. Did he genuinely believe he had any claim to my grandmother's house? Had his ego expanded so much that he'd forgotten whose name appeared on the deed? Another buzz. And I know the boutique means a lot to you. We can negotiate a fair payment for your half. My half of my business that I'd built independently, funded independently, managed independently, while he complained about my long hours and dismissed it as my hobby. I poured a glass of wine, the premium bottle I'd been saving for a significant occasion. This qualified. Tomorrow, David would discover some harsh realities about property law and separate assets. But tonight, I'd enjoy the tranquility and plan my next chapter. Morning brought a series of increasingly furious texts from David. What the hell did you do to our credit card? The airline won't honor our tickets. The hotel canceled our reservation. Answer me. I silenced my phone and headed to my boutique. Friday was always our busiest day, and I had a new shipment of designer handbags to process. Life continues, even when your husband runs off with an assistant young enough to be his daughter. Around midday, his mother telephoned. Elena, dear, David told us everything. About how controlling you've been. How you pushed him away. He says you're being vindictive now, creating problems with his travel arrangements. I put her on speaker while I arranged a window display. Did he mention emptying our shared account and charging tickets for himself and his girlfriend on our credit card? Silence. Then, well, he said you left him no choice. That you'd been cold and distant. Patricia, I have his texts. Would you like me to read them to you? The one where he bragged about taking our money. Or perhaps the one where he mocked my age. Another pause. He did seem rather cruel. I told him that text message was inappropriate. I appreciate the call, Patricia. I've always respected you. But I think it's best if we end this conversation now. My lawyer has advised minimal contact with David's family during the proceedings. Proceedings already. Goodbye, Patricia. By late afternoon, David's sister Rachel was spreading family gossip through mutual acquaintances. Apparently, David and Jessica were stranded at a budget motel near the airport, their Florida dreams temporarily derailed. He'd attempted using his personal credit cards, but those had been maxed out for months. Another warning sign I'd noticed. My lawyer called with an update. The emergency hearing is scheduled for Monday. Given his admission of emptying the shared account and the documented credit card fraud, we're in a strong position to freeze all remaining assets. Has he been served yet? Not yet, but he'll receive the papers at his new motel address. Speaking of which, his girlfriend's social media is providing excellent evidence. She's been posting about their adventure all day, including some choice comments about you. I smiled, thinking of my own documentation, a year's worth of suspicious charges, hotel receipts, text messages proving premeditation. David had been so focused on his grand escape that he'd never considered I might be observing, waiting, preparing. My phone buzzed with another text. You think you're so clever, but I made copies of all the boutique's financial records. Half that business is mine. I forwarded the text to my lawyer, adding it to the growing file of David's mistakes. Let him learn the hard way about separate assets and business ownership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being prepared. The emergency hearing on Monday exceeded my expectations. David appeared in his new youthful wardrobe. Designer jeans too tight for his age, a blazer that screamed midlife crisis. Jessica waited outside, her youth painfully obvious under the harsh courthouse lighting. My lawyer presented our evidence methodically. David's gleeful text about emptying our account, his credit card fraud, his documented history of hidden expenses, each piece carefully collected over months of quiet observation. Your Honor, David's hastily hired lawyer attempted. My client admits to some rash decisions, but Mrs. Thompson's actions have been vindictive and calculating. Calculating, my lawyer countered. You mean prudent. My client protected her separate assets and maintained detailed records of her husband's suspicious behavior. That's not vindictive, that's smart business. The judge reviewed my documentation, the separate property deed to the house, the boutique's incorporation papers in my name only, the careful separation of business and personal finances that David had always complained about. Mr. Thompson, the judge addressed David directly. You admitted via text message to deliberately emptying a joint account and using shared credit cards to fund a trip with your girlfriend. Do you deny this? David shifted uncomfortably. I was just trying to make a clean break. By committing financial fraud. The judge raised an eyebrow. And now you're claiming rights to property that documentation shows is clearly separate from marital assets. The business grew during our marriage. David's lawyer tried again. My client is entitled. The business was established before the marriage, my lawyer interrupted, and Mrs. Thompson maintained strict separation of business and personal finances throughout. We have documentation of every penny invested and earned. I watched David's face as reality began sinking in. He'd thought this would be easy. Empty our accounts, run off with his girlfriend, maybe claim half my business in the divorce. He'd never bothered to understand that my insistence on keeping things separate, which he'd mocked as obsessive, had been protecting me all along. The court finds sufficient evidence of financial misconduct, the judge announced. All shared assets are frozen pending final dissolution. Mr. Thompson is ordered to return any funds removed from joint accounts within 24 hours. But that money's gone. David protested. We spent it on. Then I suggest you find a way to replace it. The judge cut him off. And Mr. Thompson, the court takes a very dim view of using shared credit cards to fund adventures with paramours. Outside the courthouse, I heard Jessica asking David about their Florida plans. His response was lost in the sound of my heels clicking confidently across the marble floor, heading back to the business he'd never understood or respected. The next few weeks brought a string of increasingly desperate moves from David. He tried claiming the boutique had been his idea. He remembered investing money in its early days. He even suggested he'd been my business partner all along, claims quickly disproven by my meticulous records. He's getting desperate, my lawyer observed. His girlfriend's social media shows they're staying at her studio apartment now. Apparently, living on an assistant's salary isn't quite the glamorous escape he imagined. David's family started reaching out, their tone markedly different from their initial accusations. We had no idea, his sister Rachel admitted. He told us you'd been cold, controlling, that he needed to escape. But then we saw his texts, the way he bragged about taking your money. That's not the brother I thought I knew. His mother called again, this time in tears. The things he said about your age, about replacing you with someone younger. I raised him better than that. I thought I did anyway. I let their calls go to voicemail. Their support might have meant something weeks ago, But now it felt like rats deserting a sinking ship. The boutique thrived, ironically boosted by local gossip about my situation. Women started coming in specifically to show support, often leaving with far more than they'd planned to buy. My ex tried something similar, one customer confided while buying a designer handbag. Thought he'd take everything in the divorce. Men like that never expect us to be smarter than them. My phone still buzzed occasionally with texts from David, his tone swinging between anger and manipulation. "You've ruined everything. I never meant to hurt you. You'll regret being so vindictive. Can't we work something out? That business would be nothing without my support." I forwarded each message to my lawyer without responding. Let him dig his hole deeper. Through the grapevine, I heard Jessica was having second thoughts. Apparently, sharing her studio apartment with a middle-aged man who couldn't afford his own place wasn't the romantic adventure she'd imagined. The age gap that had seemed exciting during secret hotel meetings felt different in the harsh light of reality. She posted about toxic relationships and learning from mistakes yesterday, my lawyer mentioned during an update call, and removed her relationship status this morning. I almost felt sorry for David. Almost. But then I remembered his haha after telling me he'd emptied our account, the casual cruelty of his comments about my age, the way he'd assumed I'd be helpless without him. Instead of pity, I felt something else: pride. Pride in my foresight, in my quiet strength, in my ability to protect myself while he underestimated me. The final divorce hearing painted a very different picture from David's imagined triumph. Gone was his cocky attitude, replaced by barely concealed panic. Jessica was noticeably absent. She'd moved on to a coworker her own age, according to office gossip. David had shown up in his old clothes. The designer wardrobe apparently returned to help repay the joint account he'd emptied. His lawyer looked tired, probably from trying to find loopholes in my documented separation of assets. "Your Honor," David's lawyer attempted one last time. Despite the separate property documentation, my client contributed to the growth of his wife's business through moral support and— "Moral support," my lawyer interrupted. "Like these text messages belittling Mrs. Thompson's business as a little business? Or these social media posts calling it her hobby?" The judge had clearly seen enough. The final settlement reflected my careful planning. I kept my house, my business, and my separate assets. David got his personal possessions and his car, which was worth less than he owed on it. "You've destroyed me," he hissed as we left the courthouse. "I'll have to move back in with my parents." "No, David. You destroyed yourself. I just made sure you couldn't destroy me too." His mother was waiting outside, ready to drive him to her house. His new home at 45. The irony of his situation wasn't lost on anyone. The man who'd mocked my age was now living in his childhood bedroom while I continued running my successful business. "You planned this all along," he accused. "You knew this would happen." "No, I just paid attention. And unlike you, I understood the value of keeping good records." His mother stepped between us. "That's enough, David. You've embarrassed yourself enough already." As they walked away, I heard her start in on him. "Honestly, what were you thinking? A 22-year-old. Emptying bank accounts. Sending those horrible texts." I watched them disappear into the parking lot, feeling nothing but relief. David had thought he was writing the ending to our story with that cruel text. Instead, he'd merely set my carefully laid plans in motion. My phone buzzed, not with texts from David this time, but with notifications of new orders from my boutique's website. Life was moving forward, just not in the direction he'd imagined. Part 3. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, my boutique had expanded to a second location. The irony wasn't lost on me. While David struggled to rebuild his life, the little business he'd dismissed was thriving. I'd hired 3 new employees and launched an online store that was gaining traction nationally. News of David's situation trickled back through mutual acquaintances. He'd tried dating apps but found women his age weren't interested in a middle-aged man living with his parents. Younger women, having heard about his history through office gossip, steered clear. Jessica had apparently warned her friends about him, sharing screenshots of his desperate attempts to win her back after she'd left. His career suffered too. The company's HR department had launched an investigation into his relationship with a subordinate, resulting in a formal reprimand. The promotion he'd been expecting went to someone else, someone who didn't have a history of inappropriate relationships with reception staff. He tried to claim age discrimination, Rachel told me during an unexpected visit to the boutique. Said they were punishing him for dating someone younger. HR just added that complaint to his file. I was surprised to see his sister in my store, but her presence spoke volumes about how thoroughly David had alienated his own family. "I know we didn't support you at first," she admitted, running her fingers over a silk scarf. "He played the victim so well. But watching how he handled everything, how he acted afterward, I'm ashamed we ever believed him." My lawyer kept me updated on David's continued attempts to challenge the divorce settlement. Each petition was denied. His claim of unfair distribution dismissed based on the evidence of his own actions. He actually tried arguing that his text about emptying the account was just a joke, she told me, laughing. The judge asked if haha made theft less illegal. The boutique's success brought unexpected validation. Local business magazines wanted to feature my story, not as a scorned wife, but as a savvy businesswoman who'd protected her interests. Young entrepreneurs asked for advice about keeping business and personal finances separate. "The best protection is preparation," I told one young woman who reminded me of Jessica. "And always trust your instincts." David's mother called occasionally, usually after he'd done something particularly self-destructive. He'd tried online gambling, hoping for a quick fix to his financial problems. He'd gotten involved with a pyramid scheme that promised fast returns. Each attempt to recover his former lifestyle just dug him deeper into trouble. "I don't know where we went wrong with him," she sighed during one call. "His father and I offered to help him get back on his feet if he'd just take responsibility for his actions. But he's still blaming everyone else. You, Jessica, his company, the judge." I listened politely but maintained my distance. Their family drama wasn't my problem anymore. My life had moved forward, filled with plans for a third boutique location and a possible expansion into luxury accessories. The only reminder of David's impact on my life was a framed screenshot hanging in my office. His final text before I blocked his number: "Have fun with your little business. At least it'll keep you busy in your old age." Below it sat my latest business award. Proof that sometimes the best revenge is simply succeeding on your own terms. 1 year after the divorce, I hosted a grand opening for my third boutique location. The event attracted local media, and the story they wanted to tell wasn't about my failed marriage. It was about a successful businesswoman expanding her brand. David's betrayal had become a mere footnote in my success story. During the event, Jessica unexpectedly walked in. She looked younger than ever, or maybe I just felt that much stronger. She shifted uncomfortably, clutching her purse like a shield. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "I believed everything he told me about how you were cold, controlling, how you didn't support his dreams. Then I watched him try the same manipulation tactics on me when things got tough." I continued arranging a display of designer sunglasses. "Those weren't his dreams, Jessica. They were escapes. There's a difference. I know that now." She paused, then added, "He tried to move in when you froze the accounts. Thought my studio apartment would be temporary. After 2 weeks of him complaining about the size of my closet and suggesting I take out a loan for a bigger place, I understood what you meant about the difference between dreams and escapes. I actually laughed at that. Let me guess. He had big plans but no way to fund them." Exactly. Everything was going to work out once his investments paid off, once he got that promotion, once his cryptocurrency definitely increased in value. She shook her head. I'm dating someone my own age now. We have student loans and a small apartment, but at least we're building something real. After she left, my assistant manager whispered, "Was that the girlfriend?" "No," I replied. "That was just another woman who learned the same lesson I did." Speaking of lessons, I gestured to a young couple examining our designer handbags. "Let's talk about your idea for expanding our accessories line." The boutique had become more than just a business. It was a symbol of independence, of resilience, of the power of preparation. Young entrepreneurs often sought my advice, and I always emphasized the importance of protecting their assets. David's mother called one last time, not to discuss David but to thank me. "You taught our family an important lesson," she said, "about enabling bad behavior, about making excuses for cruelty." David's still living at home, still blaming everyone else for his problems. But we're not defending him anymore. That's your legacy to our family, showing us the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. I thought about that legacy as I reviewed plans for a fourth location. David had intended to diminish me, to trade me in for a younger model and take half of everything I'd built. Instead, he'd inadvertently pushed me to become even stronger, more successful. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. David filed another petition to revisit the settlement. Judge dismissed it immediately and ordered him to pay court costs. "Thought you'd enjoy that." I smiled, thinking of him in his childhood bedroom, still trying to rewrite an ending that had been determined the moment he underestimated me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. 2 years after David's cruel text message, I received an invitation to speak at a women's business conference. The topic wasn't divorce or betrayal. It was about building and protecting a successful business. My story had evolved from cautionary tale to inspiration. During the Q&A session, a woman asked about keeping business and personal finances separate. "My husband says I'm being paranoid, that marriage means sharing everything." "My ex-husband said the same thing," I replied, "right up until he tried to claim half my business in our divorce." Trust your instincts. Protection isn't paranoia. The boutique chain had grown to 5 locations, each more successful than the last. The little business David had mocked now employed 30 people and had been featured in several national magazines. Through mutual friends, I heard David had finally moved out of his parents' house into a small apartment above a garage. He'd had to take a lower-paying job after his former company downsized, eliminating his position during restructuring. His dating profile still listed him as young at heart, though his profile photo was clearly outdated. Jessica, ironically, had become a regular customer at my original boutique location. She'd earned her business degree and started her own social media consulting company. "You inspired me," she told me once, showing how a woman can build something lasting instead of falling for empty promises. I kept David's cruel text message framed in my office, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Below it hung a sign that read, "Success is the best revenge." At the 5-year anniversary celebration of my original boutique, I stood addressing my employees and loyal customers. The space had been transformed from a single little business into the flagship store of a thriving business empire. David's mother attended, though I hadn't sent her an invitation. She waited until the crowd thinned to approach me. "I saw David yesterday," she said, smoothing her designer dress, one she'd bought from my store. "He was talking about his glory days, about the life he could have had. He still doesn't understand that he didn't lose everything in the divorce. He threw it away." I thought about that text message, his casual cruelty, his assumption that I would crumble without him, how he'd expected me to beg, to break, to prove him right about my desperation. Instead, I'd built something stronger than before. Each new boutique location was a testament to what women could achieve when they stopped dimming their light for insecure men. The young saleswoman I'd hired last month, coincidentally also named Jessica, came over with a question about the new inventory system I'd implemented. As I explained the process, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the store window. I saw what David had failed to see 5 years ago. Not a woman getting older, but one getting wiser, stronger, more successful. His cruel text message was meant to be an ending. Instead, it had been a beginning. Not just for me, but for every woman who heard my story and realized she deserved better than someone else's midlife crisis.